Good morning and welcome to Market Cafe with me Ankur Mishra and Kanishka Sarkar. In next 1 hour, we'll get you all the news that matters to you before opening of market, and we'll also tell you which stocks should be there on your radar. But let's get started with an eye on the globe. US markets did show some enthusiasm on Tuesday. Kanishka, good morning. It was all around green in US.
Absolutely, Ankur. A very good morning to you, first of all. Now, let's take a look at how Wall Street fared overnight. Now, US stocks did rally overnight after US President Donald Trump said over the holiday weekend that he's agreed to delay those tariffs of 50% on the European Union. The Dow Jones Industrial Average that saw gains of about 740 points or almost 2%, while the S&P 500 that rose more than 2%. Both snapped their 4-day losing streaks. The Nasdaq Composite, that's the tech-heavy composite, was also up 2.5% as technology names like Tesla saw outsized gains. Now, if you look at particular stocks, Tesla shares gained about 7% after Elon Musk said he was shifting his focus away from politics and back into his companies. Other tech-related names were also higher, including Nvidia, AMD, Apple, as well as Microsoft. Outside of tech, US steel shares advanced roughly 2% after reports said that Japan's Nippon Steel is expected to close its acquisition for $55 per share. Now, remember, yesterday's action follows a losing week on Wall Street. Now, the Dow and S&P and Nasdaq Composite all slid more than 2% last week after Trump's initial call for tariffs on the EU. Now, this week, if you look at the cues that traders are going to be watching out for, traders will follow earnings from Okta due after Tuesday's closing bell. This will be followed by companies such as Nvidia and Macy's later in the week.
And ahead of OPEC meeting, ministerial meeting is set to be held today, and a full meeting will be held later on in the week. But oil prices did advance on that front, and if you talk about Brent crude, it was hovering around 65 barrels per dollar, and similarly WTI around $61. Now, all in all, it will depend whether or not OPEC nations decide to increase the output, which is expected by 411,000 BPD. And if you also see the news which was hovering around US-Iran, that has also pushed the crude higher. But all in all, if you talk about gold, that also showed some resilience in the trade yesterday. In fact, gold fell more than 1% below 3,110 per ounce, and it is rightly so after the US market rally was there. There was no demand for gold per se, and therefore it has extended losses for second straight session. And the most talked about point has been the US 30-year yield, which has fell more, which has fell most since March. And you would have seen what happened in Japan. It was getting reflected in United States of America.
That's right. We also have a few cues to watch out for later in the day. In India, we are going to have industrial production data that's going to come out. In the US, the minutes of FOMC rates meeting is what is expected later in the day. In terms of global earnings, we have Nvidia this week. Apart from that, there are also a few other events that we'll be watching out for. For instance, New York Fed President John Williams is expected to speak later in the day, and so is Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashkari, who's going to speak later in the day. So their commentary is something that we are going to be watching out for.
Definitely, and keeping up with the global news, Donald Trump says that European Union is finally moving on trade talks, calling it a positive step after threatening steep tariffs. In a post on Truth Social, he confirmed the EU is working to schedule meetings days after delayed a plan of 50% tariff imposition until July 9. Trump accused this bloc of slow-walking negotiations, but now signals fresh momentum are seen.
That's right. Let's also take a deeper look at Tesla then. Now, Tesla's European sales have nosedived 49% in April, with just over 7,200 cars sold. And the drop comes despite a broader boom in EV demand as the brand battles growing backlash over Elon Musk's political ties, including support for Germany's far-right AfD and rising competition there. Now, the company's aging lineup and protests across Europe are adding to its woes.
Right. If you talk about Fed's Richmond remarks, and he's flagging off uncertainty upon businesses as hiring freezes and investments get delayed. Now, these remarks have been made earlier in the day, and Bakin is noting that while the country economy is on track, questions around tariffs are causing a caution. Apart from that, he also mentioned that consumer spending remains resilient despite deteriorating sentiment, and the Fed is waiting for clarity on policy changes before actually adjusting its interest rates.
That's right. Now, moving on, the European Central Bank is nearing its 2% inflation target, according to Governing Council member Joachim Nagel. Now, the target is finally within reach, Nagel has said, adding that ECB is on right track despite some fluctuations and underlying services inflation. However, elevated uncertainty, particularly due to US trade policies, makes it challenging to predict the future of interest rate moves.
Right. The Swiss National Bank is navigating a highly uncertain environment, according to SNB President Martin Schengel. He added that exporters are not guided by individual inflation data. In fact, with some months seeing negative prints, he also added it is not necessary for the bank to react every time, but focus on the medium term.
That's right. On to another update then. Salesforce, that is back in deal mode, announcing an $8 billion acquisition of data giant Informatica. Now, the move aims to supercharge its AI offerings by tightening control over how data is managed and used. Now, after shelving talks last year, the deal gained momentum in April amid interest from multiple bidders, marking Salesforce return to big-ticket M&A.
The US is set to receive a golden share in the proposed $14.1 billion Nippon Steel US deal, giving Washington veto power over the key decisions. It's part of the National Security Pact tied to the deal's approval. President Trump plans to tout the agreement, featuring $14 billion in new investment at a Pittsburgh rally on Friday.
Moving on, the EU has approved a massive €150 billion defense fund, its biggest yet. This as fears of a Russian attack grow and trust in US protection wanes. Now, the SAFE scheme will use joint borrowing to fund cross-border arms projects with a strong buy-European push. Hungary abstained, but 26 member states backed the move, calling it a vital step to deter future threats.
That's right, but shifting focus to Japan, Japan's cabinet has approved an emergency plan to allocate 388 billion Japanese yen from reserve funds. According to reports which came earlier, the move aims to support businesses and households impacted by US tariffs. The package includes utility bill subsidies and funds to help regional businesses cope up with the rising costs. According to the report, the initiative responds to the growing concerns that US tariff policies could harm Japanese industries and weaken consumer sentiment.
That's right. Now let's shift focus to US again then. Now, is Donald Trump still India's friend, as many in India believe him to be? Or is MAGA now becoming an impediment in India-US friendship, whether it is about student visas, manufacturing, or even trade deal? Now, he has been making a lot of noise about Indian tariffs, sometimes even claiming that certain decisions have been taken by India. Now, in an exclusive conversation, we caught up with Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, to decode his approach. Let's go across and listen in.
Well, I think since Donald Trump has no philosophy, the answer to your question is what he thinks about any given subject on any given day. He sees international relations through the prism of personal relations. So, for example, he and Prime Minister Modi have had over the years a very good personal relation, which Trump thinks therefore means the U.S. and India have good relations. But I don't think he sees the connection, at least not yet, between the student visa issue and a number of other things, his taking credit for the ceasefire between India and Pakistan after the recent terrorist attack in Kashmir, for example, because what he centers on is himself. And so this is what drives the things that he says and the things that he does. It's not a grand strategy because he doesn't do that. It's all about him and his personal relationships.
The president has been making a lot of noise about Indian tariffs, sometimes even claiming that certain decisions have been taken by India. Should this be dismissed as bombastic rhetoric, or is it just his way of deal making and putting out his wish list?
Well, everything Trump does, in a sense, is deal making because that's all he really is interested in. He's not necessarily familiar with what India's trade policy actually is. He looks only at the question, is there a trade surplus or a trade deficit? And if he sees a trade deficit, then he assumes that the United States is not being treated well. I think it's very important for countries that are now caught up in the Trump tariff phenomenon to remember what their own interests are, and that is that reciprocal tariffs hurt the Indian economy as much or more than they hurt the United States. Trade wars generally hurt everybody involved in them. I understand why the way Trump goes about this and the very fact of tariffs is disruptive to Indian entrepreneurs and Indian policy. But I think that looking at it the way, for example, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer did, he was able to get a deal fairly quickly. Not the most advantageous deal, perhaps, but we don't know what's going to happen now between the U.S. and the European Union, the U.S. and Japan, the U.S. and India. So it's very dangerous days ahead. And I think dealing with Trump in part is helped if you just, when you watch him on television, just turn the volume off and then think about what your policy should be.
A lot of work was done by India over decades to dehyphenate Pakistan. But now President Trump claims he brought about the ceasefire by telling India and Pakistan that he will not trade if the confrontation continues. Doesn't it reflect poorly on the White House intelligence and its understanding of global issues?
Yes, it shows he doesn't understand. I don't think he appreciates the history of the India-Pakistan conflict going back to partition in 1947, and his reference to tariffs shows that that's all he really thinks he understands. It's a matter of dollars and cents that gets to him as a businessman. I'm not sure if someone asked him specifically about the hyphenated relationship, he would know what that meant, or he would know anything about the history. It's nothing intentionally insulting. He just doesn't know enough to know the implications of many of the things he says.
Thanks, Gulshan, for that exclusive conversation. Now shifting back focus to India, the Met Department has announced that India is likely to experience an above normal southwest monsoon this year. According to IMD's forecast, the country is expected to receive 106% of the long period average rainfall during June to September period. This marks the second consecutive year of above normal monsoon predictions. However, the IMD has issued red alerts for Kerala and Karnataka, indicating the need for heightened preparedness. The department has also issued orange and yellow alerts for several other states, including Delhi, Maharashtra and part of Northeast, signaling the possibility of heavy rainfall, thunderstorms and strong winds in the coming days. My colleague Sameer Dikshit actually spoke to Dr. Mrityunjay Mohapatra, who is DGM of IMD. Let's listen in.
लार्जर प्रेडिक्शन आज यही है कि ये खुशखबरी है भारत देश के लिए। आने वाले मानसून अच्छे रहेगा, नॉर्मल से ज़्यादा बारिश होगा, मात्रात्मक रूप से 106% लॉन्ग पीरियड एवरेज का बारिश होने का संभावना है और ये रेनफॉल यूनिफॉर्मली डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड है। मोस्ट पार्ट्स ऑफ कंट्री में नॉर्मल टू एबो नॉर्मल रेनफॉल होगा, सिर्फ नॉर्थ ईस्ट इंडिया को छोड़ के, और नॉर्थ ईस्ट में कुछ हिस्सा जैसे लद्दाख और रेड एरिया को।
For the next 3-4 days, do you understand that monsoon is going to pick up the pace in covering the nations?
During next 3 to 4 days, it will continue its vigor. After that, rainfall activity will decrease temporarily, and also the fast progress जो अभी मिल रहा है वो भी थोड़ा धीरे होगा फॉर सम टाइम.
All right, while we prep for those heavy rainfalls, now let's also take a look at some of the impact on the agriculture sector. Now, the early arrival of monsoon has delivered a sour blow to this year's mango season. Traders at Mumbai's APMC report daily losses. For more on the ground reality, my colleague Anjali is joining us for details.
The early onset of monsoons has cast a gloomy shadow over the sales of mangoes. What we're gathering from dealers is that the production of mangoes have also slowed down given the unseasonal rains, and they're facing a two-pronged problem. One is on the production side, where there are more reports of mangoes getting spoilt more easily, and the production being much lower at the farmer's end as well. But also on the consumer end, with the onset of the monsoon, even the purchases of mangoes have gone down considerably. Now, what traders tell us is that the production side has been lower by about 50 to 60%, and they're only receiving about 30 to 40% of the stock that they used to during this time of the season. While the mango season is every year extends up to the middle of June, this year traders say that it has moved up by at least 10 days, with the monsoons coming earlier too. Also, Mumbai APMC says that collectively the entire mango ecosystem may be facing losses upwards of 1 crore rupees every single day, and with that it's not just the dealers but it's also the farmers that are facing the brunt of the early arrival of monsoons.
Thanks, Anjali, for that update. Hope you were able to grab some mangoes as well. But it's time to slip into break. But before that, let's also listen into what will happen to the consumption or demand of mangoes with the people we spoke to.
Our sense is from Q2, we will start seeing green shoots in terms of the urban recovery, because food inflation is again quite benign. Overall inflation is benign. Two interest rate cuts have also happened. Some worry points on urban are still there. Rents are still quite high, and overall wage inflation remains just 4-5%. That is still slightly a concern, but annualization should help, and we see that definitely the food inflation being low. To play that, I would say that again, Nestle, Britannia are good play on that. High urban exposure. The liquor shops are something which we continue to like. United Breweries, United Spirits, Pidilite and Berger.
We don't expect any major recovery. However, we do have products in adjacent category which doesn't have any bearing on account of rate, as well as LSV, as well as exports. So to an extent, that is not impacted. There are decent inquiries from US. Of course, in the current season, it's very difficult to meet with it, but there are going to be some trial supplies.
We have seen too much of rain coming in very short period of time in Maharashtra, especially in Bombay and adjoining areas. So that will have some impact on the early Kharif crop of onion, etc. More important is the distribution of rainfall over the next 4 months.
Demand could be anywhere between 200 gigawatt to 260 gigawatt. We are living in now growing uncertainties both on demand side and supply side. Our power systems have to cater for that. Demand side is now being affected by large loads coming up suddenly, unprecedented weather uncertainties.
Welcome back. After the break, you're watching Market Cafe with me, Ankur, Mishra and Kanishka, Sarkar. Let's take a look at how Asia Pacific market are performing. You can see Nikkei is up actually 0.5% on the news that there will be a 40-year bond auction today. So that is something to be watched out for. But ahead of that, 0.5% up on Nikkei. China, you can see Shanghai. The market has actually opened on a very muted note, flat to positive, just 1 point up there. Similarly, Hang Seng is also showing flat kind of moves in the opening of just 14 points up, and Kospi, after a day of green yesterday, today opening on a muted note as well, just 7 points down after the prospective president comments had come in. But even Australia's ASX 200 is opening flat to positive. So all in all, mixed kind of signals coming in from Asia Pacific market after a good set of show from United States yesterday. And even in our markets, the Nifty implied open is showing just 10 points down. Yes, after yesterday's volatility, it seems that bulls and bears will have a tough fight today. Kanishka?
That's right. Let's see how that pans out. But let's move on to some more news updates then. Now, the FM met with CII representatives over the topic of GST reforms. Now, as per sources, the industry body pitched and its recommendations regarding GST. Prakash is joining us with exclusive details.
The finance minister met with the industry body on next stage of GST reforms, a very crucial development coming in. In fact, representatives from CII have submitted their recommendations to the finance ministry, in fact, for GST 2.0. Several recommendations have been submitted. We're given to understand that the CII pitches for early completion of GST rate rationalization and simplification process which are underway. As you are aware that the government had already constituted a GOM for wider consultation on rate rationalization. It is expected that the GOM may submit its report in the next GST Council meeting. Along with that, sources are also telling us that the industry has requested government for inclusion of petroleum products under GST, which is a long pending agenda. In fact, it's going to be uphill task for the government to convince states at this point of time. Along with that, suggestions were also made to expand the ambit of input tax credit. Sources are suggesting that the finance minister is likely to hold a meeting with the other industry bodies ahead of the next GST Council meeting, which is expected in June. A very crucial development coming in, and the government is trying to receive inputs and suggestions from the industry bodies before moving ahead when it comes to GST reforms 2.0.
Thanks, Prakash, for that update. And GST is something which will be watched out for in the coming days. But stay on with us because date of filing of income tax returns has been extended from July 31 to September 15. This extension is expected to mitigate the concerns raised by stakeholders and provide adequate time for compliance, thereby ensuring the integrity and accuracy of the return filing process. The government release also said that extension will provide more time due to revisions in the ITI forms. Prakash, what are you picking up? Why this change was made?
Yes, in a significant development, the Income Tax Department has decided to extend the deadline for income tax return filing to 15th September from 31st July. A very significant development and a big relief for salaried class and other taxpayer, as they'll get additional 45 days time to file their income tax return. A very significant development, especially in the context of new ITR reforms which have been introduced by the Income Tax Department. And this decision was made after a delay in issuing the notification of income tax return forms. So it's a very crucial development, as the government has decided to provide additional time to the taxpayers. Along with that, the Income Tax Department has clearly stated that some changes have been made to the notified income tax forms, and considering the time required for system readiness and rollout of income tax return utilities for assessment year 2025-26, and therefore Central Board of Direct Taxes has decided to extend the deadline. It's a very significant development coming in, as the taxpayers and salaried class would get additional time to file their income tax return. Along with that, stakeholders had reached out to the government asking them requesting them additional time to meet compliance which have been made in the new ITR forms. And therefore, considering their feedback, taking all this into account, the government has decided to extend the deadline to September 15.
All right, thank you, Prakash, for getting us all those details. Now that the deadline to file ITR has been extended, we also caught up with our expert, Amarpal Chadha, who's a tax partner at EY India, who shared insights into what this move would mean for the taxpayers. Now let's go across and listen in.
It is a structural change, and that's what the department is also clarifying. In fact, in the notification, while they've said you need more time for integration and testing, they've also highlighted the fact that the TDS returns actually get filed only by May end. That means that the tax credits start reflecting only in June and later. So I think it's really nice that they have extended the timeline. Generally, also the taxpayers get a very short window, that is between June and July, to do the tax returns. So this is, in my opinion, very helpful for the taxpayers and also for the department to get the forms right and everything in place so that people don't feel system challenges or they are rushed for the last moment. Definitely, whether it's good that these kind of extensions are being provided. The only caution here is for people to remember that they need to file it and also they need to pay the due tax, because the more you delay, there will be more interest for the delay in payment of tax. So people should not just take it for granted that now it's all done and let me wait till September 15th.
Moving on, an important meeting with exporters was called by the Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal yesterday, and a one-stop destination for all exports related queries is in works. What happened in that meeting? My colleague Sumita Karir is here with more details.
Yes, in fact, sources suggest that Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal met with export promotion councils, in fact, to discuss centralized exporters portal. Remember, the government has been mulling the creation of a centralized exporters portal for India. Sources tell us that in that meeting, exporters were suggested to strengthen database to ensure they have a better exposure to the global market. Feedback was given from Indian ambassadors that traders abroad want better clarity on Indian exports. There were details that were shared about quality certification and supply of the product line that needs to be updated on this portal. The portal, remember, will integrate data from DGFT, export councils and private trade sites to make sure that the integration is seamless. Remember, many exporter databases have been rather inaccessible. They require logins, or they have been lacking filtering tools that are based on quality certification. So that has resulted in overall inefficiencies, limited outreach for MSMEs and missed opportunities in niche markets. But this meeting was, remember, aimed at addressing all of those issues.
All right, thank you, Sumita, for getting us those updates from Piyush Goyal's export-related meet. But let's move on and take a look at some earnings counters. Now, LIC's profit in Q4 rose almost 20% to come in at 48,150 crore rupees in FY25. And the company's value of new business, that has crossed 1,000 crore mark for the first time. Anurag Shah is here with us with all the key highlights.
Good set of numbers by LIC in Q4 and overall performance in FY25. In FY25, LIC's net profit has reached to the mark of 48,000 crore, up by 18%. And in Q4 also, LIC's profit is up by 38% and reached to the mark of 19,000 crore. Major improvement is in LIC's share in non-par product, which has increased from 18% in FY24 to 27.69% in FY25. VNB margin has also increased by 80 basis points and reached to the mark of 17.6%. LIC has also declared final dividend of 12 rupees per share, and LIC has declared a bonus for policyholders in FY25 of rupees 56,190 rupees. First time ever, LIC's value of new business has crossed 10,000 crore mark also. LIC has invested in equities 1,85,000 crore in FY25, which is 41% more than FY24. Profit booking from equity is also 73,000 crore, which is 19% more than FY24. LIC has mentioned that their talks to buy stake in health insurance company is at final stage, and board will take a call very soon on the impact of new regulations. LIC has said that there is no impact on the profitability due to the change in regulation, the new norms of special surrender value, but a number of policies got decreased due to the change in regulation, and the product design also changed. But there was a major impact in Q3, but by the Q4 the impact got reduced because of the change in strategy by LIC.
Thanks, Anurag, for those details. But moving on, telecom major BSNL has reported a net profit of rupees 280 crore in Q4, marking it second consecutive profitable quarter after nearly 2 decades. My colleague Nivedna is joining in with more details.
In a major financial turnaround, BSNL, state-owned operated telecom operator, has reported two back-to-back profitable quarters after 18 years. In fact, BSNL has reported 280 crores net profit in the quarter 4 of the financial year 2025, because if you compare it to what happened in the quarter 3 of the financial year 2025, the profit stood at 262 crore. But when you look at the annual loss of financial year 2025, that loss has been reduced to 2,247 crore. At the same time, when you're comparing these numbers to financial year of 2024, as far as quarter 4 is concerned, it saw 849 crore loss, and the financial year 2024 annual loss was at about 5,370 crore. So clearly the financial turnaround, we're given to understand, has been driven by cost efficiency measures. At the same time, 4G and 5G rollout plans to boost the particular growth as well. And commenting on that was Minister of Communications Jyotiraditya Scindia, who took to social media platform X and did state that continuing on its profitable path, BSNL has posted a strong net profit of 280 crores in Jan-March quarter, that is of financial year 2025, marking the consistent turnaround of BSNL given the kind of numbers that we did see previously.
Okay, thank you, Nivedana, for getting us that fine print for BSNL. But moving on, after a dull March and April, the IPO rush seems to be back in the primary market, with almost 9,000 crore rupees raised in the 2 months in the first quarter itself. Now, Sharad is joining us to take us through all the highlights of the activity that's been happening in the primary market.
Well, the primary market is seeing finally action after 2 months of a lull period, especially the volatility seen in the market the months of March and April. Now, the month itself, if you look at it, the quarter numbers, we are seeing 6 main board IPOs. The numbers are roughly 9,000 crores of fund is being raised. But of course, the numbers are still muted as compared to the numbers seen in the third quarter of FY25 and even on the fourth quarter of FY25. But primary markets is coming back into the action. Now, is the IPO rush back? More than issue size of 10,000 crore is also expected to come in the second half of calendar year 25, and large names are there on the screen: Lenskart, Grow, NSDL, PhonePe, Tata Capital, and even LG Electronics from the MNC space, which would be in focus. Now, of course, the liquidity has returned in the market, but the stocks are still lagging in the IPOs in 2025. 59% of total issues, both if you include the main board and the SME, are still trading below the issue price, and only 41% are trading above these numbers. Now, interestingly, let's look at the startups also, which are actually eyeing for IPOs, and there are important reasons for it: strong liquidity coming in, a booming digital economy, and a global investor interest as well. And of course, the valuations are also premium when it comes to the Indian markets. Now, the startups hitting the street in 2025, they include PhonePe, Zepto, Boat, Cardeco, and including Bluestone, Avance, Grow, and even Physics Wala. So this is the entire list. The startups are actually hitting the street as well. But now let's see how the wealth creation has actually panned out in the IPO street this year. Over the last 3 years, there has been almost 59 IPOs in 2023. Positive listings were almost 51. 2024, this number was on the higher side, 72 positive listings out of the 90 IPOs. And it's been a kind of a downward trend when it comes to the overall 3 years comparison. For 2025, only you could say 66% of IPOs have given a positive listing. So of course, markets are cautious, but primary markets is definitely back when it comes to the overall numbers and the liquidity.
Thanks, Sharad, for that quick update on the primary market, but also pay attention to an important data which is coming in today. IIP data is set to be released later in the day, but let's take a look at the expectations on IIP data for the month of April. According to estimates, the data is expected to decline in April. Varun is joining in with more details on what to expect from IIP data.
Well, we are expecting a softer IIP data for the month of April. The street estimates is 1.02%. Now, this is because of broad-based slowdown in the economic activity. If you look at the core sector growth, which actually contributes to around 40% of the overall IIP numbers, that has increased only 0.5% in the month of April. And the slowdown was actually led by petroleum refinery output, which declined around 4.5% on a YOY basis. The electricity production was also it also showed a growth of only 1%. That was a muted growth. The steel production was up only 3% on a YOY basis versus compared to 9.3% in the month of March. The cement production slowed in the month of April. It was only the coal production which showed a good growth of around 3.5% on a YoY basis in the month of April. If you look, the overall consumer IIP, that is expected to slip in negative zone in the month of April, and this is basically because the rural demand that has weakened further. This is something that some of the reports highlight. The capital goods IIP growth, that is expected to have improved in the month of April as compared to previous month. If you look at the high frequency indicators, they showed a mixed trend in the month of April. So if you look at the IIP numbers for the month of April, we are expecting 1.02%, and that is a little bit slow. And if you look at the basic number, that the core growth numbers that have come earlier, they actually indicate a slowness, economic slowdown in the month of April. So keep an eye on this.
All right, thank you, Varun, for getting us all those details. IIP data is what we'll be watching out for in the day. But moving on to some more updates, British American Tobacco, the largest shareholder in ITC, is gearing up to sell a part of stake again, that is 2.3% of its stake via a block deal. Ashesha is joining us with all the details.
Well, yes, ITC will be in focus on account of a block deal which is expected to happen today, and BAT, which currently holds about 25.4% stake in the company, is looking to sell 2.3% stake in the company via a block deal which could happen today. Agencies have also reported that BAT is offering ITC shares at 400 rupees per share. They are offering about 29 crore shares, and the total transaction value could be about $1,361 million at the floor price of 400 rupees per share. Agencies have also reported that OTC stake sale will help the company achieve its buyback program by about £200 million. So 2.3% stake, that is likely to happen today. The block deal is likely to happen today. Now, BAT currently holds about 25.4% stake in ITC, which is valued at about 1.4 lakh crore rupees, and today it is looking to pair 2.3% stake, which could be at about 400 rupees per share floor price. Now remember, BAT sold 3.5% stake on the 13th of March earlier this year, which was valued at about 17,500 crores. So yes, ITC will be in focus because BAT is looking to sell about 2.3% stake in the company.
Thanks, Ashesha, for those details. With this, it's time to take a quick break. But don't go away. After the break, we'll tell you which stocks should be there on your radar. Welcome back. After the break, you're watching Market Cafe with me, Ankur, Mishra and Kanishka, Sarkar. Let's once again take a look at Asia Pacific market, how they are performing. Japan's Nikkei continues to be strong among other Asian peers with 0.5% up. Remember, there's an important bond sale which is lined up later in the day. 40-year bond sale is something which will be washed out not only with the Asian pairs but other stakeholders as well. Apart from that, if you look at Shanghai, it is continuing its flat to negative tone with most of the cues being exhausted. The only next thing to watch out for in China is PMI data, which is set to be released on weekend. Hang Seng to down around 0.5% after a muted start, but Kospi is also showing some signs of weakness today after hitting around 3 months high yesterday. So all in all, mixed kind of trends coming in from Asian Pacific market, and our own Nifty implied open is also down 7 points. So no change in Asian markets per se, mixed cues, and Nifty is implying just 7% down.
Right, while we watch out for that muted opening, that likely muted opening, let's also go across to Raminder, who's standing by with a list of all the stocks that could be driving all the action in the market today.
Well, yes, EID Parry can be in focus on back of Q4 result, where company has announced its Q4 number, and company reported revenue at rupees 6,811 crore, which saw an uptick of more than 22% year-on-year basis, whereas company EBITDA margin saw a decline of 67 basis point year-on-year basis. And company also announced investment of 350 crore in wholly owned subsidiary Parry Sugar Refinery India Private Limited. Moving to next, RCF can be in focus on back of Q4 number, where company reported revenue at at rupees 3,730 crore, we saw an uptick of more approx 4% year-on-year basis, and company's EBITDA margin saw a decline of 25 basis point year-on-year basis. So an inline set of number of RCF in Q4. Apart from this, Hindustan Copper can be in focus, where Hindustan Copper revenue saw an uptick of more than 100% on a sequential basis. And if we talk about PAT, then PAT also saw a good uptick of from 63 crore to 187 crore, and EBITDA margin saw uptick of more than 350 basis point on a sequential basis. And LIC of Life Insurance Corporation of India can be in focus on back of Q4 earning, where company's net premium income was down by more than 3% year-on-year basis, whereas company's solvency ratio declined from 1.98% to 2.11%. Apart from this, NMDCs can be in focus on back of Q4 result, where company reported revenue at rupees 7,005 crore as compared to 6,568 crore on a quarter-on-quarter basis, and company's EBITDA margin saw a decline of approx 700 basis point on a sequential basis. Moving to next, Tata Steel can be in focus, where Tata Steel has filed a fresh petition before the High Court of Delhi seeking relief, including compensation of 757.14 crore along with interest for cancellation of coal block and non-payment of pending dues. Apart from this, Dalmia Bharat, Vedanta and Vodafone Idea can be in focus, where company's board meeting is scheduled to be held on 30th May to consider fundraise. And lastly, India Glycos can be in focus, where board meeting is scheduled to held on 30th May to consider stock split.
Okay, thank you, Rabinder, for getting us that list of stocks that we should be keeping on our radar today. But time now to take a look at some expert views. Now, Rajesh Bhatia, the CIO at ITIMF, is bullish on sectors like financials and life insurance. What other sectors he is betting on? Let's take a look.
We have liked financials quite a lot, although I've taken some money off the table. That's because what's happening is I think you're going to see a consolidation of profits, at least for large private sector banks in the current financial year. If interest rates come down, what happens is their asset book is really getting repriced lower. They will adjust over a period of time with their deposit costs also kind of coming down, but the profit growth will be probably, muted, I would say, in the current financial year, only to accelerate next financial year. So my sense is, given how well financials have done, they are the only conspicuous sector which is at a new high. My sense is that you should lower your expectations on certain private sector banks. To answer your question, I'm very excited about telecommunications, life insurance companies, utilities, digital businesses, so on and so forth. And like I pointed out, with the improving credit trajectory, I think consumer discretionary, like automobiles or some other consumer discretionary items, are also emerging as buy themes for me.
Why do you like life insurance? Growth is just not there. There is no growth.
Sorry, why do I like IT?
No, insurance. IT में भी growth नहीं चलो, दोनों में growth नहीं है.
नहीं, life insurance में growth है. So fortunately, I'll tell you why I like life insurance. Look, this is a very consolidated business, right? You can see that the top 4 companies which are eating into the LIC's market share are all banks, right? And they are definitely kind of doing quite well as far as both APE, the insurance premiums are concerned, as well as value of new business, which is really, you can call it profits. Both those fronts, they are doing well. The valuations have come down because of severe concerns on regulatory aspects. So surrender value, all of those aspects, there were challenges on bank assurance, whether that channel will get kind of cut for some of these banks. All of those regulatory concerns are now behind us. So my sense is that as you move forward, both your APE as well as VNB, which is top line and bottom line, are going to move very well. And by the way, the valuations have come to very attractive levels. You look at these stocks, they've not done too much over the last few years. So
Moving on, it's time to focus on some news. Elon Musk's SpaceX Starship rocket suffered a leak, tumbled out of control in space and exploded during a test flight, marking the company's third major setback recently. Despite the failure, SpaceX emphasized that it learns from every test flight and will continue to review data and works towards its next flight test. Apart from that, Apple is planning to release a dedicated app for video games on which devices will be pre-installed on iPhone, iPad, Mac and Apple TV later this year. The app will replace Game Center and is part of Apple's push to enhance the gaming experience on its devices. And moving on with the news on IPL, in the final league match of IPL, Royal Challengers Bengaluru pulled off a stunning run chase and beat Lucknow Super Giants by 6 wickets. By doing so, RCB became the first team in the IPL history to win all the way league stage matches in a season. The victory has sealed RCB's place in the top 2 of the points table, which will enable them a second chance even if they lose the next match. With this, it's time to say goodbye in this edition of Market Cafe, but do watch the markets coming up next.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.